today we're going to work on bongos. They're not going to be like a real bongo because they won't be round. Mine are going to be a hexagon just because that's easier. And they're going to have a wood top instead of skin drawn tight, so it won't sound quite as high pitched. It won't match the sound of a bongo exactly, but I think it'll match pretty well. I don't think it'll be quite as heavy as like a conga. Probably something kind of in between bongos and a conga, but hopefully closer to bongos. So we're going to try to do this out of a fence picket. I have this scrap piece of plywood. I think that's like a 5mm or something. It's really thicker than I want, but that's what I have. So I'll probably sand that down as much as I can. But that's basically all the materials, is just those two pieces. Tools, I'll be using the table saw, skill saw, square, pencil, tape measure. I'll probably use a sander, like I said, air compressor and brads, glue, and I'll probably stain it and polyurethane finish at the end. So first thing first, I've measured up from that end 37 inches and made a square mark. I don't know if you can see that very well. Okay, so I'm gonna cut that, and I'm gonna use this end to make the larger bongo. I'm gonna cut those at 6 inches long. So you might be thinking, well, that's 36 inches. Why'd you measure 37? For the each cut we make, we're gonna lose a little bit of wood for the width of the blade. And also because I'm not squaring up that end before I start, so I want there to be at least a little bit of extra on the end so that I cut it off and get a square end on that side. So cut this square with a circular saw, and then while it's still at length, I'm gonna go ahead and get it up on the table saw, and we'll cut our angles on each edge. I'll talk about that once we get there. All right. Here at the table saw, what we did was I set my fence over on this side, 4 3/4 inch off the blade. I made that measurement and everything while the blade was up high and still at 0 angle. And we went ahead and locked in the fence there. Then set our angle at 30 degrees, and then we can set our depth. It's a good time to point out that if you have any blemishes like this, I don't really know what that is. I want to make sure that's on the inside of my drum. So when we go through this process, whichever side of the board is facing up is going to be the inside of our drum, and the side facing down is going to be the outside of the drum. So if you have any blemishes you want to hide on the inside, make sure they're up. Or if you have something really interesting in the grain that you want to make sure is on the outside, make sure that side is down. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this through. Our first cut will be ripping a piece off, as well as putting that bevel on there, and we'll just turn the board around and run it through again to just knock off the bevel on the other side of the board. I'll show you what I mean when I get back. Alright, we've got a piece cut. See, we've got our angles on both sides. That's what I was saying, turn the board around to do your second cut. Don't flip it over to do your second cut, so you get this shape, a trapezoid shape, not a parallelogram shape, with those edges leaning towards each other, just like that, 30 degrees. Alright, so now what we've done is set our fence over here 6 inches. Blade is back to a 0 angle, and we set our depth right above board. So we should be able to get 6 6-inch sides and have a tiny piece of waste at the end. That way we make sure everything is all same size and square. You can use a sled or whatever you want to do here, but this is how I'm gonna do it. I'll show you what I mean by that. All 6 pieces cut, and we'll sand those to clean them up a little bit. But this is basically the outer shell, the shell of the larger bongo. That's a tiny little piece. So that 1 inch extra on the main measurement is just right. So I'm gonna get these glued together at the seams, pop some brad nails in them, And then I'm gonna come back and do the same thing for the smaller one. I'm gonna I'll set our width. I'll bring the fence back over here, set our width to 3 3/4 inches, and then run through, get both bevels just like we did this one. And I'm thinking I'll cut those maybe 4.5 inches long or something. I need to do some math and figure it out exactly, but probably something about 4.5 inches, 5 inches in depth for the drum on the smaller one. And then I'll get it back shell assembled. Probably film in between, or I might just show you once I have both pieces cut, show you the assembly. But then all that'll be left is to trace out our shells on the plywood, and then cut that out and attach it as the top. As well as we might try to connect the two drums to each other with a small piece. When we get there, I'm gonna go ahead and go get this glued up and try to get it set, and then I'll come back and cut the second one. Got that shell all assembled, using these rope bands just for some extra inward pressure while that glue is drying. But just put one brad at each corner all the way around the top and bottom, plenty of glue at the joints. It should end up fairly strong once it's all done. So now we can go get to cutting up a smaller one. Okay, I already cut this one and assembled it the same way I did the large one. It's just 3 3/4 inches wide, 4.5 inches deep. I'm gonna let this I've let this sit for a while before I handled them, so the glue can mostly set. But I'm gonna set these aside, trace them out onto my plywood. I'm gonna set these aside and let them completely dry overnight. Also on this one, you can see we kind of messed up this cut here. We're gonna make this the bottom of the bongo, but I'm also gonna try to clean this up a little bit, try to even that out just a little bit. But it's gonna be okay, it's gonna function just fine. And look, there's nests on inside each other. Look, nice. Okay, so I'm gonna cut these out. I'm gonna cut close to the line, not right up to it. I'm gonna actually try to sand these a little bit thinner to try to get them to sound better. And on this side, it's already painted white from an old project, so I'm gonna try to sand all of that white paint off, and as well as get that, just get the board as thin as we can without getting through those veneers or whatever, the face layers. So I'll cut those out, try to sand them, and probably have to come back to this tomorrow after we've let the glue set. Alright, I ended up using a multi-tool, carbide tip, to cut those out. Got a lot less tear out with that versus circular saw, so that's the way to go. Still a little bit of overhang, so we can clean it up with the sander toward the end. But I was saying I was going to sand these thinner. You might be able to tell by looking at that one. I did spend some time sanding on that, but the more I sanded it, straight, but okay, I had to move and sit my phone down so I can use both hands. This piece I started sanding, so let me hit this one first. Maybe you can hear this one. Not sure how well that comes through on the camera there, but this one does not have quite as much ring and sustain as this one has now, and it did before I started sanding. The more I sanded on it, the duller the sound got. So I'm gonna stop right there. Maybe you can also hear the difference in pitch too. Try to be quiet. Right, so there we go. There's our drum heads. I'm not gonna sand on that big one. I'm not gonna sand the small one anymore because I feel like that's actually kind of killing the sound, oddly enough. I did end up using a multi-tool, carbide cutting tip. That gave me much cleaner cuts, a lot less tear out, so I could get really close to those lines, right on the line pretty much, but got a tiny little bit overhang still that we will clean up with sanding after we've attached the top. It's gonna be pretty good. Like I said, I'm gonna do that tomorrow actually, so I'm gonna come back tomorrow. It looks mostly dry, but I'm gonna come back tomorrow, sand these shells, take the rubber bands off, sand them, and then I'll probably go ahead and stain these. I might even go ahead and attach the two together. Yeah, I might even go ahead and attach the two together before attaching the tops. No, I'll attach the tops first, so then I can get them do a flush all the way around, and then I'll attach them together. And then I'll probably put like maybe one thin coat of polyurethane on there, maybe 2 thin coats. I think it's gonna be pretty nice. So check back in with you at the next step. Alright, back next day. This is not glued in or anything right now, just showing you what I've come up with here. Just using this as a spacer because I don't want that block like all the way to the bottom. But basically that's what it'll look like assembled. I got them upside down so that the top should be even once they're put together. But before we can do that, that's just 2 pieces of scrap wood to cut our spacer. Before we get to assembly, we need to clean this up, trim all the overhang. I'm going to use a multi-tool for that. So we'll get both of these cleaned up as best as we can with that, and then we'll be hitting them with the sander, get them nice and clean, and then we're probably going to give them some stain. Let that dry, and then we can move on to our finals. So we'll go ahead and try to clean this up and get these trimmed up with the multi-tool real quick. Alright, we got all those edges cleaned up and everything, did a little bit of sanding. I didn't go too crazy on it, but no sharp edges or anything like that since it's for a child. Remember, this is for a Christmas gift. I'm gonna give it to my youngest nephew. He's not quite 3. Glued those 2 pieces together for that middle block. Got them clamped, and I put 1 brad through each side. I'm gonna stain all the ends and edges, but the faces are gonna be up against the boxes, so I'm not worried about. I mean, it's okay if they get some stain on them, but I'm not necessarily going to try to make sure they get stained. But then the bongos themselves, I'm going to do the whole. I'm going to stain the tops and the sides. I might eventually flip it over and make sure you get the bottom as well, but I'm not going to worry about the inside. But yeah, that's where we'll start. Going with that kind of reddish cedar looking stuff. After I do probably 2 coats of the stain, then we can assemble all these together, and then we'll do some polyurethane on top of that. So I'll come back after I've done probably 2 coats of stain. Alright, so we are completed actually. I went ahead and assembled it. Show you inside here. I did actually put screws in to hold that block in the middle. They are also, it's got a generous amount of glue in there. I was actually able to brad nail on the small one, but because the big one is deep, I couldn't get in there with the brad nailer, and I didn't have a clamp deep enough to really hold that either at the moment. But got it done. We stained it, 2 coats of stain. I did actually go with the spray-on polycrylic. It dries really fast. It's already dry actually. Tiny bit sticky. See my fingerprints go away. That's funny. That's it. We're done with this. Stick around. Come back to the next video. I'm gonna try to build a small tongue drum. So check it out.